This next lady is an inspirational human being, not just in the classic car world, but on many levels, as we'll find out. She has studied physics and finance at Princeton University in Oxford, has a PhD in experimental atomic and laser physics from Oxford University. She's a full member of the International Chief Advisory Group known as ICJAG, where she's their PR director. She is a steering committee member for the UK-based Concours d'Elegance at Hampton Court. She has judged at Pebble Beach, Cavallino Classics, Salon Prive, Ferrari's 70th anniversary concourse, has been attending concourse since age 3, proud owner of several classic cars, speaks 5 languages, and is a CEO of VeriVin, a startup company which analyzes complex fluids inside containers without having to break the seal. I find that very interesting, by the way, so we're going to have to talk about that.
Absolutely.
She's the brand ambassador for one of my favorite brands, Iso Rivolta. I've seen you playing pianos. I've seen you doing some ballet on Instagram. I also have has shown interest in rebuilding classic car engines, namely a flat 6 engine, which we'll talk about hopefully. Is there anything this lady cannot do? Please welcome Cici Muldoon. Cici, what a bio, man! What a bio.
Oh gosh, it's a bit disparate. There's a bit of everything. I must correct you on one point, which is I am no longer a member of ICJAG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
No, it's fine. I stood down last September because I have so much going on, and I just, I have to start prioritizing and cutting things out. So I love what they do, and I still support them fully and wholeheartedly. But yeah, it was just one thing too many on my plate, and I made some, some choices and things. So, but yeah. Anyhow.
Okay. Not to worry. So I'll fix that later on. Yeah, I mean, what an interesting bio profile you've got. I mean, seriously. So tell me about your car collection. What have you? What special cars? I know you've got pre-war car. Have you now? You've got an MG.
Yeah, I have a 1934 MGPA, which is my first pre-war car. And I've been hankering after a 4.5 liter Bentley for some time. But as a first step in that direction, I went for the MGPA. And it's a lovely little thing. I mean, it just puts about, but it's amazing because I took it to the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court last year, and it got so much attention. It was easily the cheapest thing in the whole lineup of cars, and it was just adored by everyone. So it's what my friend Jody, whom we just spoke of, calls a wafter. So I'll give her credit for that one.
It's interesting because I think I saw your car there, and I've had a fascination with the old pre-war MGs for a long time.
Okay.
And I was looking at the prices. They're not too bad actually to buy one now. It's
they're not
reasonable.
It's reasonable, and I mean it's the kind of thing that you can work on, that you can and as I say, it's not ever going to be a fast car, but it's a lovely thing to take to the pub and and just go for a small drive in. And I think for people that have never experienced driving a pre-war, it's a very easy introduction. So it's not. The one thing that's funny about it is the gearbox configuration, the layout of the gears is totally funny. So it literally goes like, it's like one, I don't remember if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's like, but it's very manageable.
Okay. Have you crunched the gears yet on that?
Well, of course. I would be lying if I said I didn't. Of course, I can tell you that I have perfect gear change. I actually have a funny story on the first time I ever drove a pre-war. I drove a friend's 3-liter. And I had gone up to Silverstone. They had an event there for the Benjafields Club, which is the vintage Bentley racing club here in the UK.
Okay. Yes.
And I went up to Silverstone. I arrived in my Dino that I'll tell you about in a second, and it's a left-hand drive dogleg gearbox. And I hop out, and immediately within 10 minutes, I'm told that should I want to, I have the opportunity to drive this 3-liter. And I can get a lesson because I said, well, I've never driven a pre-war car. hop it and go. So into the Bentley I go, and next to me is this lovely gentleman, Nigel, who I'm told is an instructor. And so off we go, and he says, you know, have you ever, you know, do you know how to double declutch? And I said, not really. Do you know, can you rev match and double declutch? No. And he's like, never mind, just, you know, do this, do that. And he was sort of talking me through it. And I have a little video of it because within 5 minutes, my brain just went, okay, this is the way it works. And I was focusing so hard, and I didn't crunch a single gear. So we get out of the car, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes later, and he says to me, I have never met anybody who has picked up on driving a Bentley that fast before. He was like, you drove it magnificently. And by the way, I'm not an instructor. I've never taught anybody before.
Really? So do you want to get into racing pre-war cars? Because I know you've been looking for a race car, haven't you?
No, I do. I mean, I want to get into historic racing of sorts. I'm not entirely sure yet what I want to race, but it's something that, I mean, I've been around, my friend Patrick has taken me around Silverstone before and done a few lessons. So, you know, it's something that I've wanted to do forever, and the only reason I haven't done more of it yet is time constraints. It's just, you know, it's hard to have the days where there's a track day, I don't have to go to work, you know, it's all coming together. So, but yeah, it's something that interests me hugely. And also, you know, in the UK, there's so many events that are not just circuit races, but, you know, there's lovely hill climbs. Like I did a Prescott in July. There's all sorts of rallies, you know, there's just so much for the classic car enthusiast.
I'd love to do something with a pre-war car, preferably France or Italy, because I know the food's great there. So
well, let's hope we're allowed back out soon so that we can go and, you know, go back to the continent. But I've done a few rallies in France and Italy and Spain, but with my TR3. So I've got a 55 Triumph TR3. And with the Dino as well. I've done one in Italy with the Dino. And that's a lovely car to take on a rally, because again, we come back to the same premise as the MGPA, where it's a, you know, British car, not too expensive, doesn't break the bank, absolutely beautiful. It, you know, it doesn't break. It always starts on, you know, it's on the button. And it's actually a really lovely car to drive. I know I would get killed. People would say, oh, it's like driving a tractor, but I love my frog foot, as I call it.
So if you were to break down, you're handy with a spanner, I believe, as well, aren't you?
I'm learning. I mean, every car is different, and I think I'm not inherently mechanically minded, but I did a PhD in experimental physics precisely so that I would break down those inhibitions. And as part of that, you know, I had to learn, you know, I worked with vacuum chambers and with optics, and I had to, you know, be competent in machine workshop. And I think that allowed me to be less afraid of spannering. And with cars, I've really always just helped out friends. So if, you know, again, my friend Patrick, same guy, has a race team, so he does race prep and support, and I'll go along and, like, you know, help change spark plugs or whatever is needed on the car. You'll just be like, you know, just help. And then I've got a lovely friend up in near Stratford, Karim Denham, who is a very, very good restorer. His natural capabilities are incredible, and he's been teaching me how to rebuild an engine. So that Bristol that you saw in my lessons were my engine rebuild lessons. So
oh man, that was amazing. I was like, I was looking at my phone, and I was sitting next to my wife, and I said, look at this lady. She does everything. This is unbelievable. I've got to have her on my podcast, honestly. But I mean, I keep meaning to do that because my father-in-law is Sicilian. And he started working on Ferraris back in 1950s, I'd say, when he was about 8 years old. In the village. Now, they were tuning carburetors with their ears back then.
I still know people who do this.
In fact, a couple of years ago, Hampton Court Palace, I was standing in the queue waiting for an ice cream at the ice cream place, and I heard a Ferrari start. I didn't know it was a Ferrari, but I heard an engine, and I said to my wife, look, forget the ice cream. I want to see what that is. I wanted to run across the field to see what it was.
Yeah.
And in front of me, there was an older gentleman. He said to me, I think he said that was a 375 or something like that. And
what year was it? Because we took a 375 to Hampton Court.
It was not last year, 2018 or no, actually no, it wasn't.
So we went 2017 with a 375.
It was 2017. Yeah, it was 2017 then.
That might have been our car then.
Yeah. Oh, so it was yours, was it?
Well, it might have been. So we took a 375 America, which is baby blue and white.
Yes.
And it, it's the Grand Prix engine in the car, but it's the, that was the Paris show car. It was the Paris show car in 1954.
Right. So it was something like that anyway. And he said to me, he says, basically I'm a Ferrari mechanic. And I said, oh, you know my father-in-law then? He said, what's his name? I said, well, his real name is Antonino Montalbano. And he says, I know him. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, we trained at Maranello's together.
Oh my God.
And I swapped numbers through with him and I gave it to my father-in-law. My father-in-law said, yeah, I know him from the 70s at Maranello. But I keep meaning to build an engine with my father-in-law. And I've been with my wife now 23 years. And I still haven't had the chance to knuckle down and say to him, let's build an engine.
You need to do it. Yeah. It's fun. It's great fun.
It's a skill.
The surname, there's a TV series in Urbano. Yeah, I watch it religiously. I love it, and he's a Sicilian as well. Actually, I have a Sicilian godfather of all things.
Okay. So he won't cross you then.
And he's also a Ferrari person. So he used to own a Ferrari of Houston, and he has a racing team, Racing Competizione, who do Le Mans and American Le Mans and endurance racing. So quite amazing. Yeah. Wow.
So who's is it Glickenhaus? Glickenhaus?
I'm just gonna let the cat.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
My cat is. His name is Sterling. Can you imagine? Named after Sterling Moss.
Yes.
So yeah, Glickenhaus. And my friend Jim, he's amazing human being who's like reinvented himself 3 times in life. And I mean, he was known for he was a movie producer and director. So he made some very cool movies back in the 80s and 90s. And he started out as a collector. So he had some fantastic cars. He's got the car that won Le Mans in the Ford v Ferrari famous battle, the Ford GT40 that won. And he's got, his iconic P car, P34 Ferrari. So as I think 67. And I mean, anyhow, beautiful cars. And he, in the early 2000s, came up with the idea that he wanted to make his own homage to P34, to this P car. And so he basically took an Enzo, went to Pininfarina, commissioned a beautiful body put on it. And when Ferrari found out that this car existed, Luca de Montezemolo supposedly flew in his helicopter, came into Pininfarina, saw the car, and he said, that needs a Ferrari badge on it. And Pininfarina said, well, you're now to take that up with the American businessman who built it. And so he phones Jim, and eventually he said yes, because I think in the beginning he had wanted it to be a Ferrari, and Ferrari were not interested. And then once they saw the car, it was so beautiful that they put a badge on it. So it is now a Ferrari P45, which is unique. And this experience then set him on course to make his own car. So he started making, so he set up his own Scuderia, so Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus, so his wife's surname. And started making their own race cars and road cars. And when you fast forward now 15 years, they have a Le Mans hypercar. So what used to be LMP1 is now this Le Mans hypercar category. They've got the 004C, which is for the GT category class at Le Mans. General endurance racing. I shouldn't just say Le Mans. There's other endurance racing. And then he's got the 2 road cars, 004S and SC, which are either paddle shift or regular old manual. And he's got the Baha boot, which is this buggy that's again a tribute to the Steve McQueen Baha boot. And So they raced the Baha 1000 and Paris at Dakar. And he's just, he's sort of reinvented himself as an automotive manufacturer in his second life. And he's this incredible person who's, I don't know, bigger than life and absolutely passionate about what he does. And I met him many years ago, and I'm just very lucky to have him as a friend, and sort of jumped on the bandwagon for SEG.
Because you were recently there, weren't you? You recently
Yes.
Went.
I went. I just returned on Wednesday, so they were testing the car at Vallelunga outside of Rome, and it was the first shakedown for the 007 hypercar. And of course, there's such few manufacturers, few teams, and who are racing this year, and there's a lot of attention. And it's his first time in the hypercar category. And rumor has it that Ferrari is coming back to the top category next year as well. So it's all very exciting. And yeah, I've actually just, if you were asking me about my cars, I've just agreed to buy a 004S. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to do a bit of work with them and support them here in the UK.
So are you racing that, or you just, is that
No, it's a road car.
It's a road car.
It's a very interesting car. It's so it's a tre posti, so three-seater, but the two passenger seats are recessed. So there's kind of back seats, although not exactly back seats. It's a central driving position, which obviously it seems like is the fashion now. We've got this Gordon Murray T50.
T50,
also a central passenger seat, and I think it's a beautiful car, and I just went, let's do something crazy.
Why not? So how many cars do you own, Cici? What have you got?
Well, so I've got the MGPA I told you about, then the Triumph TR3, which is British Racing Green. Then I've got a my love of my life, my Viola. So she's a 1974 246 GTS Dino. So,
lovely,
and she is her color, which is the original color when they made 31 of, is Viola Metallizzato. So she's bright purple. She's a bright purple Ferrari, and she just looks, those 70s lines in that color. And she's a delight to drive. She's got beautiful Daytona seats. So she's chairs, no flares, as I like to say, because a lot of them would be chairs, no flares. And yeah, she's fantastic. I take her on car rallies. I drive around the Cotswolds, and she's just great. And the newest addition I've got coming my way is a 1960 250 GT PF coupe, so Pininfarina coupe. Except this car is it was a one-off car ordered by this Swiss gentleman racing driver called Willy Detweiler in the 50s.
Yes.
And he basically asked Ferrari to make him a PF coupe with a competition engine and rally spec. So the car has essentially what I like to think, it has a show wheelbase engine in it. Right. So it's a wolf in sheep's clothing because it's a PF coupe, but it's really a show wheelbase, which is a car that I have a huge connection to through my father. And I'm really excited to get it. So I get that.
So where's that coming from? America, is it?
Yeah, it's in Houston. It was in California up until recently.
Okay. So
it was actually restored by a friend of a friend's. So I've got the whole, sort of restoration history and file and everything. So
wow, that's what's important, isn't it? The history file, and having a history file and original patina. Originalities. What judges are looking for, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, so it's very hard. The older you get with a car, the less records, and obviously the rarer the car, the less we've got some pretty rare cars. I'm thinking one in particular, which I can tell you a story about in a second, where you struggle to get build sheets, you don't have a lot of documentation, and it's a great job the restorers do to really track down forensically what a car should be like. And obviously when you get to something like the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghosts or the pre-war Bentley, it's very difficult because very few items on that car are going to be are there that left the factory. What left? There's very little left that left the factory. And in many cases, because they would be bodied, you'd buy a chassis and an engine, and then you get a coach worker to put your body on it. And it would be weird and wonderful. And then years later, they decided to change it. And, it was sort of, so it's hard. Originality gets fuzzier the older you get. But, Concour judging. So, I mean, this is something I got into in my late 20s. And,
how did that happen? How did that happen, Cici? How did you get into that?
Well, it was because I'd been going around to car shows with my mum and dad for ages. Sterling, get off the piano. Sorry, let me get. There you go. So I had been going to car shows at Concour with my mum and dad since the age of 3. I've got pictures of me at Pebble Beach, age 3.
Wow.
And I always took lots of pictures, asked lots of questions. I'm an inherently very curious person. I'd want to know how everything worked and what it did. And eventually one day I was sat at dinner, I think it was at Cavallino or maybe Pebble Beach, but I was sat next to, he probably won't remember it, but a man called Glenn Munger, who was on the Pebble Beach committee. And I think he was chief judge at one point.
Yes.
And he said to me, you should try out the Concour judging stuff. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, he must be mad. All these guys are guys that were there in the 60s and 70s. They're all now in their 70s or 80s, and they're Anoracs, and they know all this information firsthand. And how can I possibly? Or they work with cars. They are ex-designers or ex-engineers or restorers. And I said, I can't imagine that I would be able to know anything like what they know. But I said, I'll give it a go. And so I contacted a dear friend, Christian Philipson, who actually, he started what were some of the first Concours as we know them in the latter day. They've always been, he had these Concours in Paris called at the Parc de Bagatelle. And they were beautiful events. And then he ended up, he's got a long history with cars before that. He was at Écurie Francorchamps, but he ended up doing, running Louis Vuitton Classic, which did rallies and events and things like that.
Okay.
And he is an absolute expert and dear friend and mentor for me. And I said to Christian, how do I get started? And he was like, well, just go along and ask to be included. And so I did. My first show I did was actually, funnily enough, right next door to where I live. So I did Salon Privé. And I'll never forget, I tagged along. I had Christian Adolfo Orsi, who's obviously of Maserati fame, whose grandfather founded Maserati, and a Lamborghini expert named Stefano Passini. And we had, two classes. I can't even remember what. I know one was a Lamborghini Mirror class, and I can't remember what the other one was. And Sterling, look, this is my cat Sterling.
Hey Sterling.
I went around and sort of observed what they did, and I got the gist, and gradually started doing it more and more, and going to more shows, just asking, can I go and be invited to judge? And and it's the formula is pretty simple. You are looking at, you've got a limited amount of time to look at a car, and you're making you're making a call on its authenticity, and depending on the Concours, it's beauty, right? Which is a really subjective and difficult one to do. Proper class judging, what ICJAG champions, so this International Chief Judge Advisory Group, and other such groups, because there's many, especially for the Ferrari mark. There's the ISEPFA, so the Ferrari Club of America guidelines, and what they advocate is essentially trying to judge a car agnostically just for its how well preserved or sensitively restored it is, because there's some things that you can no longer preserve, at which point you have to restore. And when you restore, it's about doing it sensitively, about using the materials that are right, about using the parts, if you can source the original parts, if not, do something approximately close to what is there. So you award points. You break down the car into exterior, interior, and engine bay, engine and chassis. And you'll look at things like, you know, I mean, I over the years, I ended up focusing on Ferrari. It's my obsession. I love, I mean, I'm reading a 1,000-page biography of Enzo Ferrari at the moment. I mean, the man, the myth, everything around it is you know, I absolutely love, and it's something that's been handed down by my father, that's shared by, you know, it's like a part of my life. And anyhow, so I focused on that. And what we would look at is we would say, okay, for instance, the wheels, are they the right Barani wheels? Are they stamped? Have they put the correct tires on it? You end up looking at things like the exhaust, and you know that it would have had a certain exhaust up until this year, and then they started using something else. And you look at the muffler tips, and you'll see, in some cases it's very obvious, like Anza or Abarth would have had stickers that are, well, either a sticker or the red band that would tell you that's what it is. In other cases, there's some in-between cases where it's literally down to the angle of the chrome on the muffler tip, you know. And it seems all very pedantic, you know, is it Phillips versus flathead screws? But I think it is important because it is preserving a bit of history. And the more missteps a car has, and the further it strays from the original, the harder it is to bring it back to what it was. Now, I personally have come to, after, so, you know, several years of doing this, I've come to believe that the conversation should not be had on a field at a show, but should be had earlier in the game, and it should be a conversation between the owner, the restorer, and anybody who, you know, might be an expert. What happens with Concour, and the reason I've become quite disenchanted with them and with Concour judging, is that inevitably you've got the very strict class judging, and there are two Concour I will name, which I think are exceptions to the rule here. But you know, you'll have your Concour judge, your class judging. And then you all get together, and first of all, it's hard because, you know, in some cases you won't have known what cars you had until very, you know, briefly before the show. It's hard for anybody to be an expert on everything, right?
No,
so
that's right.
You've got judges who know, but inevitably at the end of the day, they don't know as much as the restorer, and sometimes even the owner knows about his own car, right? Of course, the owner has an agenda; they want to win, but it's like, what is it that you're winning? You're winning a plastic cup at a you know. So it ends up being a big ego contest that's very silly in a way. And then at the end of the day, what happens is you go into a room, you've got your, you know, correctly judged class winners. I'm gonna be crucified for everything I'm saying, by the way, if anybody listens to this. But they'll get their class winner out of every class. And then they'll say, all right, time for the special awards, which are the, like, you know, consolation prizes. And you give awards to people because you want them to come back to your show next year. And then you'll do the best of show. And you end up choosing best of show and comparing apples and oranges, because you're comparing a pre-war Bugatti or with a, you know, 1970s Lancia. I don't know, you know, it's really difficult, really subjective. And my experience is that 99% of the time, it comes down to politics. And, you know, and it's a very silly exercise in futility. However, I do believe in Concour as an opportunity for owners to share with the world and with the wider public these gems that they are, you know, keeping for, you know, they're guardians of. I think they're an opportunity for them to get together with their friends and share their passion. And I think, I mean, at the end of the day, they should be a great time. This is why I love Hampton Court. This is why I'm on their steering committee, because I think it is excellent fun. You know, the hospitality is great. They focus on the owners, on the cars. You know, it's chance to walk around in the sun, drinking champagne, looking at beautiful cars. I mean, you know, what can go wrong? And the way they look at it, they say, actually, we're going to let the owners choose the best of show, because they know a lot about it. Actually, the owners are much cleverer sometimes than people give them credit for, and they'll know that that's a dodgy car, and they'll know that that's the real deal. And so they vote between each other for the best of show, and it works really well for them. It's not for everyone, but you know, I love it. And the two Concours, I would say, that for me stand out from the rest of I mean, I'm sure there are many more, and I'm talking about the ones that I have exposure to, but so Cavallino Classic, which is all Ferrari in Florida, and obviously Pebble Beach. I mean, really, Pebble Beach is the real deal. And I would say, out of all the classes at Pebble Beach, if you really want to feel distinction for winning something, if you win the M1 or M2 classes, the Ferrari classes, they are judged like nothing else in the world is judged. And that I had the privilege in 2019 of judging the M1 class, and actually but I was a shadow judge at that point. I was invited back last year as a full judge for a Pininfarina class they're having. And then sadly for me, it turned out my parents had entered the class and my friend Jim Glickenhaus had entered the class. And so I had to be moved, and then COVID happened, and, and we didn't have a Concour last year. I will be going back, but the experience I had in 2019 with them was something else. We got the cars probably in July ahead of the Concour, which happens mid-August. And I can tell you, I spent every Sunday, the entire day up until the Concour studying. I mean, you look back at, you've got these 8 cars, and you look at build sheets, you look at articles, you look at period photographs, and the research, the archives that some of these guys have are phenomenal. They will have.
How do you see all that information? Do they send it to you, or do you just research it online?
No. We had an email group going.
Okay.
And we had, a shared drive, and we would just share all the documentation there. But by the time I went out to Pebble Beach, I went out with binders this big.
Wow.
With, and all of that you collate down to a spreadsheet in which you mark down the main things, and then you collate that down and down. By the time you get to the actual show, it is actually incredibly high pressure for them, because you've got 12 minutes per car basically to judge. And although you will have done all this research, you must be very careful not to prejudge the car, right? You don't go on the field having made up your mind that if it's a dodgy history, or that there's been an issue, you're prepared, but you don't go saying, I know what's going to win. So you look at the cars on the day, and you have to make all your points, and you've got everybody milling around you. And of course, one like me, you've been going since you were 3 years old. Every third person's like, hi, and you're like, shut up. I need to be paying attention. Don't talk to me. And it really is. They are scrutinized. Those cars are scrutinized beyond anything. So it is a huge distinction to win. For me, I think winning your class at Pebble Beach is without comparison to any other show. Now, if you ask me what show I would want to go to as an entrant, if I could only choose one, I would choose Villa d'Este. Above, like,
where's that, in Italy? Where's that? Italy.
On Lake Como. Yeah, on Lake Como.
Yeah. That is. That's a show I want to go to. I really want to go to that. It looks so beautiful.
It is. The setting is fantastic. The whole the aura of it. It's a very different type of Concours than Pebble Beach, obviously, but it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah. I wonder. So you didn't judge the junior concourse this year at Hampton Court, did you, last year?
No, I did. So I do the RAC Club Trophy with Peter Reed. So
okay. Because I want to speak to one of the judges, because I had my TR3 in there. Electric junior one.
Yeah, that's right. You told me, and it didn't win.
It didn't win. They put it right next to the Porsche 917, the replica of the Le Mans winning car. When I got there, I remember it was about 5:30 in the morning. Now, I'm not normally an early bird person. I don't wake up very early at the best of times. But this day I got up at about, it must have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, loaded the van up, and I drove down to Hampton Court, and I unloaded. When I unloaded, he wasn't there. I went to get a cup of tea, came back, and the 917 was behind me. I said to the guy, excuse me, could you not put that anywhere else? Because it makes me look so silly. Because I hadn't finished the car, you see. I had some design work that I had to get out for COVID. So I had to concentrate on that last year.
Yeah.
So I didn't finish it, but I told the concourse that. And they said to me, no, it's fine, bring it along. And then halfway through the day, somebody came up to me with one of those badges, those concourse judge badge things.
Yeah.
They're like little. And he says, are you going to be able to drive it around when we say go? Each one of you have to. I said, no. I said, I can't drive it. It's not connected. The electric motor's not connected. Oh, don't worry. He said, drive it. Just push it. I went, you're joking. Push it. So you would have seen me pushing it all the way around for my little boy.
That's very funny.
but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
And did your son enjoy it as well?
Yeah, he loved it. So did my wife. My wife was so surprised. She was like, I can't believe this. This is fantastic. Like, basically, you're showing, all right, it's a junior car. It's nothing to really get excited about, but it's one of my favorite events of the year. And
Oh, it is really. I think in the UK, and you know, I think last year they hit a home run. I mean, they were lucky because it was the bit where we were let out of lockdown. Everybody wanted to come out. We've got a beautiful sunny day, and I think the caliber of cars we had last year are, you know, were better than any year previous. And this year we've got an excellent lineup of cars as well. So very excited.
Okay. So I mean, I'll go to that no matter what. That's the only show last year I went to be honest. But I want to try and get to Preston Hill Climb. I've heard that's good.
Preston's really nice.
And I want to go to Brooklands this year as well because I haven't been to Brooklands
very
yet.
interesting. Yeah, and they've got a little museum as well, which is quite interesting to look at.
Yeah. So Cici, tell me about how you became an ISO, the brand of an ISO, the ISO.
Iso Rivolta. So that's a very fascinating one, actually. It's sort of, you know, the car world is such a small world where everybody knows each other. And I was asked to do it by a friend of mine, Andrea Zagato, and his wife, Marella. So she is Marella Rivolta, but married to Andrea Zagato. So you've got the coming together of two incredible car brands. And I've known, actually, I first met Andrea through an ex-boyfriend who was a car designer who worked with him. And then it turned out that he knows my first investor in my company, who is also a big Aston fan. So he was president of the Aston Martin Owners Club in the US, and he loves Zagato, and he's got a bunch of Zagato bodied cars, and therefore knows Andrea. And there was sort of like this connection through Bob, through my, and he was actually, Bob was my was a very good friend of my father's who went to university with him and ended up being an investor in my company later on. Anyhow, so Andrea and I are friends, and one day he phones me. He pitched the idea last year, and then finally this year phoned me up and said, Marella and I have seen an article that came out on you in The Key, which is a publication that the Classic Car Trust puts out every year, which kind of looks at the state of the collector world, or the Concour, the collectors and everything. And they'd written this article on me, and he said, we really want you on board. We're aiming to, so the idea here with the Iso Rivolta revival is that it is Marella's family's brand mark, right? And it is a passion project. It is a continuation of the fact. It's not like she's picked up something that, there's so many revivals now where it just feels like I'm gonna pick up Pizzarini or De Tomaso and start over. It really is her family's mark. And it's a real passion project for her. But also, she is lone against many other male CEOs in that world as a female CEO of a car brand. And I think that's something that comes through. But it's a very strong part of the proposition. And so what they started doing is they've, I think, had the idea for some time. They were aware that the Iso brand isn't one that, is as recognizable anymore. And so to get the brand out there, they put a car in Gran Turismo. This is, I think, in 2017. And it was hugely successful. And, oh, you have frozen, hold on. Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can see you. Yeah, can you see me?
Oh, it's my computer has frozen. It's all.
Can you see me?
Hold on. Yeah, I can, but it's frozen. Let me try to do. Oh dear. If I do that, let me try to close it and open it back up.
You there?
Oh gosh, this is not, now the screen is totally black.
Do you want
So yeah, so Iso. So I was telling you the story. So they launched this Vision GT car in Gran Turismo. They had,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had like 120 million players. It really was. It was a very popular car on there, and I think this sort of spurred them on to say, okay, you know, we can go ahead with the real thing, and you know, people will at least originally the people who understand what Iso was as a brand, and so they launched a car October 2020, which is the Iso Rivolta GTZ, and
Okay.
it's a neoclassical design, and it's an homage to the AC3 that won its class at Le Mans in 64 and 65. So it came out in 1963. And the car has, you know, they made 19, they've sold 12 of them, and it has
Wow.
been in every magazine. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm. Yeah. How can I get in touch with them? I'd love to have them on my podcast.
Absolutely, I'll, you know, put you in touch gladly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
the idea with it is, you know, there's a very exciting car in the pipelines, which
Yeah.
will be a much larger numbers, and that will come out in 2022. So they have asked me, they've taken a gradual, measured step in to see, you know, gauge the market and the interest. And it's been, you know, an overwhelmingly positive response. And so they've asked me to come on board and help as, you know, as a female. The angle they want to take with this upcoming car is essentially that it's the car the intelligent career woman would choose over a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. So it's sort of, it's not to say that it's going to be a girly car in any way, or that it's aimed at females at all, but it's just saying, it's female management, female led, and, you know, champion that, because that's actually something to be, you know, something to be championed.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, I'll look forward to seeing that. Definitely, definitely. But so you were talking about race. You were talking about getting into racing. What type of racing do you want to get into?
Historic racing. I'd love to do the revival. I'd love to do Goodwood Revival for sure.
Good,
This year, I might get the chance to take my new 004S up the hill at Festival of Speed. So that should be fun. Slightly petrifying. But yeah, I mean, what I'd love to do is just do loads of historic racing. As I say, it's just the hard thing with cars is that, you know, so I've got these three things. You know, I've got the steering committee Hampton Court, the Iso Rivolta, and now, you know, working with Glickenhaus a bit, and there's only a limited amount of time to do that and go judge car shows, and, you know, and get so I have to limit the things that, you know.
And you got VeriVin. So tell me about VeriVin. What do they do?
So what do we do? So we so this is born out of my love and passion for wine, and my love of lasers and physics. So essentially, what we have is a non-invasive analyzer that can analyze liquid products in their container, so through wall. So very simply put, we take, you know, you take a bottle of wine, for instance. It doesn't need to be wine. It can be, you know, we can analyze olive oil, honey. You know, we recently launched a project to look at injectables. We can do spirits, whiskey, you know, but wine is our number one business case. It was how we started. And what we do is we shine a laser into the bottle. It interacts with the wine right behind the wall of the glass. And then we read the light back out that has interacted with the wine. We process it, and that gives us a unique, so using basically statistical analysis techniques and machine learning, we are able to get a fingerprint of the contents. And that fingerprint then gets put into a database, which lives on our servers at work. And we start populating a database with all the fingerprints of millions of you know, liquid products, whether they be bottles of wine in this particular case. The idea being that eventually we have you know, machines sitting in different part of the world, all talking to each other, throwing up their data to the cloud, and we're using all that data under the bonnet to build our algorithms and improve them. The point being that we are able to tell you something about the wine, right? So for instance, if I have a known sample of this that I know is real, and you come to me and you say, well, I want to buy this lot of wine at auction or whatever, I want to know if they're real. then we would have a pre-existing data point scanned of a wine already in our database.
Okay.
Another example is we could tell you, so consistency testing. So we can test for inconsistencies in a large batch. So why would testing through bottle be useful, right? Why would anybody want to? Well, it's useful when you don't want to open and take a sample, because if you take a sample, there are existing techniques that are, you know, hugely more sensitive, like gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. But if you don't want to open it, then you've got to look through the glass. You've got to use light spectroscopy.
Okay. Yeah. How do they normally test that sort of stuff?
Normally, what happens? So if it's existing wine that you know has been in the market and has changed hands many times, it doesn't. It's experts who look at the label. So I'll tell you what they do. They look at. I should have picked something more appropriate. Hold on. They will look at a bottle like this, and they will say, well, let's analyze the label and the capsule and the packaging and the glass. So you've got an expert who makes a human call on whether it's real or not real. So what we're saying is it is of value to analyze non-invasively when either the contents are high value, so you do not want to spoil it because this is a 10,000 pound bottle of wine, or when you have numerous, so it's the transactions that have to be high value, either because the individual items are very expensive, or because you've got many thousands of one thing, and if you open many thousands, you don't have your 1,000 anymore.
Of course not. No.
You can't do 1,000. So that's the basic premise of it. And you know, we basically offer analysis. It's not just about the hardware. We're a platform company, so it's much more about the data and the analysis that we provide than the hardware. Even though the hardware is, you know, it's a very complex bit of kit. It's got, you know, 1,000 parts in it, and some very sophisticated detectors and things, and you know, it's all patented. But really, it's at the end of the day, what we see as the end goal is having this database with all these fingerprints of bottles, because then you'll have, you know, every time a bottle gets scanned, it gets a QR code, and that QR code is linked to our database. So eventually you'd be able to take your bottle, take your phone. So we have a mobile phone app that displays with the device, and you would just say, you know, bleep, and it would tell you what the previous result of that bottle was. And I think what's really interesting is the time aspect that this takes on, because over time, what we're saying to producers is, you want to protect your brand value. You want to, you know, it's a certification, a proof, a peace of mind for everyone on the supply chain, from merchants to, you know, to the producers, to the storage companies. But it's a peace of mind that you can, in 4 years' time, when this bottle of wine that left your winery and you scanned on our device and tagged with our thing, there is a fingerprint of the actual physical contents of this bottle stored indelibly, you know, on a blockchain on the cloud. And, you know, 4 years down the line, when that bottle has changed hands 10 times and you have no idea if it was stored in a hot kitchen or if somebody refilled it with something else, then somebody can take out, scan it ahead of an auction in Hong Kong and know whether it's what was tested 4 years before or not. So that, so it's kind of that. And, you know, it's a similar, we have focused on wine because we profoundly believe that it is an industry with possibilities. It's difficult because the pockets aren't as deep. Most people that have our sort of technology head straight for military, defense, university research. It's hard to convince people to part money for, because it is expensive kit that we're talking about. But we believe it's an industry that needs cleaning up, that needs, you know, needs to be made more efficient and come into the 21st century. And, you know, and if we prove our business case there, then we can move on to, you know, spirits. There's a lot of counterfeit and quality control problems in spirits as well. You know, olive oil, they say the mafia makes more money from olive oil than any other activity in Italy. You know, Manuka honey, there's 10 times more Manuka honey than ever gets produced in New Zealand floating around. And then, you know, the big side step that would be, you know, that is in our sights is healthcare, so pharmaceuticals. And one of the things we just recently got a government grant for a postdoc to come study injectables in conjunction with the physics department. And we'll be looking at the cold chain breakage in the Pfizer vaccine, because when it's not kept cold the entire time, there is molecular degradation, and you can we're investigating whether that's something that we can see with spectroscopy, and whether we could develop a solution that could be at a GP surgery in order to test the vaccines.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. That's really clever. And how long has that company been going for?
It was, as an idea in my head, it was 2014, incorporated 2016, really in earnest 2017. It took a long time to get off the ground because, I was the crazy wine lady going around saying, I want to, so to give you context, I did my PhD at Oxford. So yes. I graduated in 2015. And, I'd worked with, lasers and optics and all these things. So I basically built an experiment that demonstrates the basic building blocks of a quantum computer. So that was what we wanted to do, is demonstrate experimentally that quantum computing is possible. And it's been fascinating, fantastic. After I graduated, I went to work in Switzerland in an instrumentation company. So small, again, scale startup sized company. Yeah. And we made spectrometers of sorts. And it was one day on the train to work that I literally thought, I missed one step. Whilst I was in graduate school, I got really into wine tasting. So I ended up running the wine club, the Oxford University Wine Circle. And then I ended up captain of the blind tasting team. So queen of the nerds.
That's a handy one. Yeah.
And I went to loads of competitions and things. And I developed this obsession with, blind tasting wine. And one of the things that really bothered me always is that I'm very sensitive to cork taint and to, sulfur and wine. And I was very taken by it. When I was in Switzerland working, one day I just thought to myself, well, why don't people analyze wine with light? Why don't they look at through? And honestly, it wasn't my expertise at all. But I just started, it started germinating in my head. I eventually moved back to the UK and went with this idea to the guy who had been my PhD supervisor. And I said, what do you think? And he said, yeah, and you could do this and this and this and this. Why don't you go talk to spectroscopy specialist, professor, somebody rather in the department? And actually, I do know who it was, Professor Ewert. And I went and spoke to him, and he said to me, feasible, but really hard. It's a lot of R&D. It's more like, a postdoc project than it is really a company. Right. It's like start with something easier. To which I said, okay, now I'm really going to do it. And of course, the funny bit about it is that for me, I could kind of see the business case there, even though it wasn't as fleshed out as it is now for me. Yeah. I could see a value proposition there, but there was a physics problem, is how do you get through the glass? And how do you analyze something that is, so the reason for wine from a physics perspective is this. Wine is one of the most complex substances, organic substances known to us. So it is 85% water and 12 to 14% ethanol, which is the alcohol. And then it's 1%, which is made out of more than 1,000 different organic molecules, which are all kind of similar. So it's in that 1,000, which is 1%, right, that makes your difference between your, Lafitte and your supermarket red. So we're wanting to look at 1% of this, right? In addition, the challenge is the type of spectroscopy we use, which is called Raman spectroscopy. Yes. Raman spectroscopy basically relies on the fact that 1 in 10 million times that a photon interacts with a molecule. So normally what happens is molecules just sat here, right, happy. A photon of light comes, bounces off, and goes back out with the same energy as it came in. Okay. So that's called Rayleigh scattering. And it's why we see the world around us, right? It's just stuff bouncing around, coming back at you. Yeah. There's other things that happen. So on an atomic level, atoms can absorb and re-emit light, which gives rise to fluorescence. And you've got, that's how a laser works. So you've got amplified. So you've got spontaneous emission and stimulated emission. And this is what one process. So, but that relies on an energy level transition. So it's you're talking about the electronic levels of an atom or a molecule. So absorbs light. And then there is the scattering, which is, as I explained, the Rayleigh scattering. And then there's a second type of scattering, which is called Raman scattering. And Raman scattering, named after this Indian scientist in the late 20s. Basically, what happens is the molecule, which is sat there, every 1 in 10 million times that there is an event, like there's a scattering event, it will impart a little bit of a momentum kick on the light. Because if you think about it, the molecule isn't just static. It's not just sat there like this. It's got covalent bonds, and those electrons are moving. So the molecule is kind of like stretching and wagging and vibrating and rotating.
Yeah.
And what happens is because of how it's moving, it affects the light.
Okay.
And depending on what molecule it is, if it's a tiny little thing, it's going to have a small kick. If it's a big lumbering thing, it's going to have more and bigger kicks. So it's going to have all the, and so what it does is it imparts information onto the light that you can map back, and you can say, look, I mean, there's a peak at this frequency, which corresponds to a carbon-carbon bond or to a carbon-oxygen bond. And so what you're able to do with Raman spectroscopy is map back to, you know, what the light interacted with. That's how we do the analysis.
Okay.
However, the challenge is that the Raman events happen 1 in 10 million times that you get a Rayleigh scattering event, which means that you get a very small amount of signal that you actually want to look at. Now, remember I told you we're looking at 1% of the mix. So you're looking at a small signal from 1% of the mix. And to make it all worse, it's behind a dark curved tinted piece of glass, which acts like a pair of sunglasses. It attenuates the light that you chuck in. So you're throwing in your laser, it already stops some of that from getting in. And then stuff that's successfully interacted with the stuff and wants to go back out, that's also attenuated on the way back out. So you end up with this like minuscule amount of information on a big pedestal of crap. And what we have to do is essentially like a signal processing problem to look for all that the really small wiggles in the big stuff. So anyhow, that's sort of from a physics perspective what makes it challenging. And you know, we're
so how long did it take you to understand all of this stuff before? I mean, because like to me, I'm a mechanical engineer, designer, and most of that stuff you just said to me, Cici, I'm not lying when I say it went over my head. You know, it's interesting, and I think that is that's a completely different podcast. I think we could sit down for a couple of hours, preferably over a glass of wine, and discuss this, because
it is tough. I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it's like a language, you know. I think once one speaks math or one speaks physics, because it's like you speak Spanish or French. It's a way of describing life. But I think, you know, you asked me how many years, probably. So I started my PhD when I was 23. I'm 37, so you know, I'd say it's taken that long to really understand the world. Because the funny thing about doing a PhD like the one I did, I feel like a highly misunderstood person in life, right? Because people look at me and they're like, oh, she's a girl with a purple Ferrari and she sells wine, right? Is that what she does for a living? She sells wine. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. My PhD, I learned how I had to, you know, learn how to interface hardware with software. So that type of programming, how to do data analysis. So I had that type of programming. So I can program in various different languages. I had to do electronics. We built our own circuit boards from scratch.
Wow.
Do optics. I had to do, you know, vacuum technology, like actually put something in vacuum. As all these, and then the maths behind it, you know, and the sort of, and then but the really interesting thing is all those skills, most of them are, you know, never use again, like vacuum chamber technology, never use again. The quantitative reasoning and the sort of, you know, programming, of course, applicable in finance, you know, great, could go out and get a job trading tomorrow. But what fascinates me and what I think is really the toughest thing is the actual sort of content of understanding how the world works. So all this stuff about atoms and molecules and the actual sort of, not the skills on the side, but the content, and then getting a picture in your head where eventually you start understanding, you know, everything from how a computer computes to how a light bulb lights up, you know, and I find that is hugely empowering. It's, you know, it makes you see the world in a totally different way. And I mean, that's really me. My first love and forever will be is science, is physics, is that sort of thing. And, you know, the cars are a secondary thing, which are fun, but.
Well, that was one of my questions to you. I was going to say, what's your number one love? If you had one thing that someone said, right, you've got to concentrate on this now, what would it be?
Physics.
Physics, yeah.
VeriVin. I think what we're doing is hugely exciting. It's also, you know, building a business. You know, actually now we're going out there and talking to real people and getting, you know, certification for our kit. And I mean, nothing could replace the satisfaction that gives you.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, I mean, proudest moment in my life. Sadly, I'm not yet married. Nobody's asked.
Ah.
Yeah, but my happiest moment it was getting my PhD. So, you know, doing my viva, my oral examination for the PhD, and being told afterwards, you know, you're a doctor in physics from Oxford. And I just kept thinking like, nah, surely not. Surely they made a
Really?
mistake.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I mean, I just find you fascinating. I really do. Um, I've got a degree in aerospace engineering, and sometimes I forget. You know, I forget that I went to university and I studied. I you know, I suffered. I suffered blood, sweat, and tears. You know, I'm from a very humble background, a very not poor, but nearly there. Grew up in the ghetto in central London. Not very nice upbringing, really. And here I am now. You know, I've kind of just got a job in aerospace engineering, space engineering, and I would say I'm relatively doing well. So I mean, hats off to you, Cici, for doing what you're doing. I look at you in awe and say, this is fabulous. What this lady's doing is, I mean, you've got so many aspects to your game. You're you know, and I'd love to meet you one day. Hopefully at one
Oh,
of
we
the
will do it at Hampton Court. I hope this year that will
yeah
be.
yeah that'd be fantastic. And hopefully this year I'll be back with my TR3 junior car, and hopefully it'll be finished. I've just got to work out how to manufacture a small Triumph badge
Oh,
with chrome. Do you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If
So
not, make a real one. Just an oversized batch.
yeah, well, the idea was to find someone who's got an original Triumph TR3, hint hint,
I see. And then you could.
and then talk them into me 3D scanning their car,
Of course, more than happy.
and
More.
then what I would do is I'd reverse engineer it. I've got my CAD station here next to me.
Right.
I'll then chuck that out to the 3D printer, 3D
Uh-huh.
print it, and then get it chromed. Probably, I think.
I think, yeah, I mean, more than welcome to, and actually, it'd be fun to get, if you wanted to do that, maybe I could get my car along too, and we can have your car and then the old-fashioned analog version in the corner.
And what's funny is my one is supposed to be British Racing Green, but it's a little bit. If you look at the pictures from the Concourse of Elegance, you should see the car somewhere on their site. It's a little bit brighter green. It's not British Racing Green, because your TR3 is actually.
No, it's the same thing. It's also it's not, mine is also not British Racing Green.
Oh, it's not.
No, I've looked up the color code before, and it's like it's brighter, as you say. It's got slightly more. I think it's got more blue in it, if I remember correctly. It's more like an apple green. But yeah, I once had to look up the color code because I did something very stupid. I took the car out and I was driving around near Marlow, and I drove over a building tack, like in a car park.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah, yeah,
and I went to get my jack out, and it wasn't one of the triangle ones, it was one of the little, like, you know,
yeah.
what do they call the ones that stretch like this?
Yeah,
Topic.
I know which. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Anyway, so I set it up and I start jacking the car up. But according to me, I'd been so careful. I put a towel behind, you know, the between the bodywork and the jack, because I was like, oh, just in case. But of course, I forgot to put a brick behind the back wheel, and the car was ever so slightly on an angle. And
Oh no.
when I started jacking up the car, it was like, and it
Oh no.
scratched into the paintwork. So it had this battle scar, and I wanted to retouch it, which is why I was looking up the paint code. But same, it's not exactly British Racing Green. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because is your TR3, was that ever rebuilt or restored? Was it? Is it?
Yeah, it was restored in the US. It's actually a left-hand drive. Weirdly, it was in Texas its whole life, and it was restored. Yeah.
Because the guy that built, well, he built the chassis for my junior TR3. He welded all the chassis up with aluminium, which is quite hard to weld up. I don't know whether you've tried aluminium welding, but it's very hard. He did it for me. He owns a TR3 himself, and in the 70s, he stripped down that TR3, bare bolt and nut and bolt restoration. And apparently the guys at the Triumph factory saw the car and said, none of the cars that we built came out the factory straight.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right? You've made your car straighter than we've done it. This is what they said.
I mean, I've heard this also before of like Ferraris, they would have, the panel beating would have been a little bit uneven, you know, and they weren't that perfect when they came out of the factory. That's very true.
Yeah. So let's. I'm gonna finish off with some questions, Cici, and then let you go. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
Oh man, all right. PTO, P34, 412P, Bugatti Atlantique. I'm just 8C 2300, Zagato bodied like MM. No, you can't leave the Mura out. You can't leave the. This question sucks.
It's too many, isn't it?
No, I mean, I'd have a lovely something French. I'd have to have like a Delage or a Delahaye or something like that. I don't know. No. You know what? Actually, I would still, no matter what, I'd have a blower. I'd have a Bentley, a pre-war Bentley, because they were good fun. 250F Maserati, 200S Maserati. How am I forgetting? My goodness. No, number one, I'd have a short-based California Spider. No questions asked. Yes, please. I'd have a 500 super fast. A 330 GTC. I'd have. I mean, I don't know. This question is. I'd probably still have a Dino. I love my Dino.
Yeah. I know. I saw a video of you driving it on YouTube.
I would have a short base, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So, second question: road trip. Who with? What car and where?
I was looking at your Gumball 3000 T-shirt, and I was about to say I wish I could relive one of those like mid to early 2000 Gumball rallies. I've heard of from person who was my sweetheart last year, did a lot of them, and I heard some stories that you couldn't make up. I'm like, I would love to do that. But in all genuine honesty, what road trip would I do? Well, I'm very much looking forward to the Baha 1000 because it's my home country, Mexico, and I've never done that. I would say my favorite rally I've ever done, and this is what I probably would replicate, was like Monaco to Venice or Monaco to Monaco in that area, like northern Italy and southern France. Those are the two. Probably northern Italy, actually. There you go. So place northern Italy. With whom? With my mom, because she's always my navigator, and I love her to. She gets us lost. Yeah. Even with Monet, I'm like, Mom, did you reset the Monet? She's like, no, I got looking at. I'm like, oh, here we are, but she's great fun, and we get really lost, and it's always lovely when we get lost. So, Mom, northern Italy, car, my Dino, still probably, or the PF Coupe. I don't know. I still have to drive it, so we'll see when I have people. I can put people in the back. There's little bench seats. And what was the other question? Who with, where, and
who? Well, it was who with, what car, and where. So you've answered that.
There you go.
Right. So that's fantastic. So last question: resurrecting a forgotten or bankrupt car brand. Which one would you try to?
Oh my goodness. Well, I've got to say, not that they've ever went bust, but I've got to say Iso Rivolta. Obviously, what am I going to? I don't know. I mean, there's so many British brands that were ashamed that went, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Iso Rivolta for that one.
Okay. Mine would have been Bristol.
Well, I was gonna say there's Bristol. That's another possibility, and the fact that I rebuilt that inline six engine, which apparently was taken from BMW. Yeah, that's a good reason. But I'm not passionate about it. It's not a car, and it's not a car that I've had experience with. So maybe I do that once the engine's back in the real car. I'll go. It's not my car. I can go see it and maybe add it to my list of resurrections. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, Cici, I need to lay down after this podcast. I've had such a blast with you, honestly, and it's been an honour, a real honour to speak to you and meet you.
Thank you. I mean, I'm so flattered to be invited on these, because I always say I don't really know very much about cars. You know, they're only my hobby. So I'm flattered to get the space.
Yeah, cool. So tell people where they can find you, Cici.
Best place, so online, either Instagram is the one I use the most, so Cici Muldoon, at Cici Muldoon. And then otherwise, I mean, I've got like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Our website, please go www.verivin.com, as in very for Veritas and van for wine.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
Okay. So. All right. Well, look, Cici, thanks very much for your time, and I'll probably post this up in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. I'll let you know before I'm going to post it. Be my guest to post pictures if you want, and all that sort of stuff. That's fine with me.
See, does that work?
Yeah.
There it is.
But yeah, hopefully soon this lockdown business goes away and we can all meet up and have a
by September.
Yeah.
Hopefully Hampton go ahead. So yeah, we'll be very happy to have you back.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it was a pleasure and an honour. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll catch up. Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.